The Presidential Election Petition Tribunal will, in a few hours, rule on the opposition challenge to overturn President Bola Tinubu's election victory. The five-judge Abuja court has been deliberating for months on wide-ranging lawsuits from the opposition, People's Democratic Party (PDP), and Labour Party claiming fraud and irregularities. In a tight race, former Lagos Governor Tinubu won 37% of votes in the February 25 elections, beating the PDP's Atiku Abubakar and Labour's Peter Obi to become president. In a major departure from the decision against live coverage of proceedings, the presidential petition judgment will be televised. Arise correspondent Godfrey Eshemoge has more.
September 6 is D-Day in the Nigerian judiciary under the current administration. It's the date that the five-member panel of the Presidential Election Petition Court, headed by Justice Haruna Samani, will decide on petitions challenging the victory of Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress (APC) on the outcome of the February 25 polls. Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) and Peter Obi of the Labour Party, as well as the Allied People's Movement (APM), are seeking to nullify the election's outcome. Atiku and Obi had called 40 of the 150 witnesses they had listed. These alongside loads of documents tendered to prove their case that Mr. Tinubu wasn't the winner, citing a number of reasons including INEC acting in breach of the Electoral Act and allegations of forgery, dual citizenship and drug trafficking leveled against Mr. Tinubu. But Tinubu, who is now Nigeria's president, denied the charges against him by the PDP, LP and APM petitions throughout the hearing. Earlier in the proceedings, which kicked off on May 8th, both the PDP and Labour Party presidential candidates had applied to the court to allow a live telecast of events to give a sense of transparency and fairness to the public. But the call to allow the cameras failed, with the court stating on May 22 that doing so will amount to making the proceedings one big circus show, adding that the Nigerian constitution doesn't permit it.
The court, in its wisdom, decided that the subject of our application, i.e. the live streaming and open telecast, is not in any way connected with the merits of our petition. The petition is separate, it's ongoing. The application did not succeed to have the televised version of the proceedings relate to the entire world. And as far as we are concerned, we are now set for hearing.
And the observers say it was highly unlikely that the court will make a U-turn, but they have now been proven wrong. As the days of waiting turned into weeks, a sense of despondency and frustration began to build, translating to hashtags such as, quote, "Eyes on the judiciary," "Tell us the date," and so on. Finally, the long wait is over. The date is now known. September 6 has been set aside as D-Day after huge fireworks during the hearing. And in an astonishing turn of events, the court has finally made a U-turn by allowing the cameras in, but with the proviso that the faces of judges won't be shown. The judicial authorities say allowing the cameras into the courtroom is to reduce the number of anxious Nigerians that may want to storm the court on Wednesday to hear the verdict for themselves, possibly overwhelming the capacity of the Temple of Justice. Legal experts say allowing the cameras in the courtroom is a significant development in the country's judiciary, but that what will be more significant yet is Wednesday's decision and the ultimate decider upon a possible appeal at the Supreme Court by any of the parties on who actually won the 2023 presidential election. Godfrey Eshemoge, Arise News.
Well, joining us now from the tribunal venue is the Arise correspondent Godfrey Eshemoge.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Rufai and Ayo. Of course, this is a very big day, one of the biggest days in the Nigerian judicial calendar. Of course, we're going to be having the justices, the five-member panel headed by Justice Haruna Samani, deliver its decision on the petitions challenging the outcome of the presidential election, which INEC had declared Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress winner. Of course, we know Atiku Abubakar of the PDP and Peter Obi of the Labour Party headed straight to the Presidential Election Petition Court challenging the outcome on grounds of the election being held in breach of the Electoral Act, in their view, and of course in breach of elections, INEC's own electoral guidelines. Of course, the stage is set, and of course we're going to have the judges give their take on the merits, or as it were, the merits of the petitions of these two men. The stage is set. Security operatives are, carrying out thorough security checks at the Presidential Election Petition Court venue. Premises, the most guarded facility in the country as we speak. All eyes on the judiciary is a popular hashtag. All eyes on the judiciary is a popular narrative, and the court has, in a more dramatic twist and a more dramatic turn of events, seem to have made the eyes even bigger by allowing cameras in the courtroom to afford every Nigerian the opportunity to witness the court's proceedings from start to finish. So the cameras are set already in the courtroom. Unprecedented event, if you ask me. Unprecedented development, if you ask me. So we're going to see how this will pan out, or if this may just be a start of what is to come in Nigeria's jurisprudence, or perhaps this may just be a one-off experience. Dr. Rufai and Ayo.
Well, Godfrey, good morning, and it's good to see you and to see that Arise News is effectively on the ground there to report to the entire world the proceedings from the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal coming up exactly 100 days after President Tinubu assumed office. You've talked about security, but how about arrivals? And when is the proceeding likely to commence? And what's the atmosphere generally there? Are the lawyers already arriving? Are the judges already arriving? The court officials who have been accredited by the registrar of the Court of Appeal, have they also arrived? What is the situation now? When should Nigerians expect proceedings to commence?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. We're not clear on when the proceedings will commence, but what we are looking at, we're looking at anything from 10 a.m. most likely, but we're not clear on the official time. And of course, for the atmosphere right now, it's a bit somewhat tense or subdued, if you ask me. Well, the politicians are arriving. I've seen a party bigwig from the Labour Party already in the court. The lawyers are arriving in trickles. Security operatives are all over the place, like I said earlier. As for the judges, whether they are here or not, I'm pretty much sure they are already in their chambers. But of course, when they come in, they take the back entrance. They don't come in like every other person does. So the situation right here is building up, and it's picking up pace as it is. Of course, many Nigerians are eagerly waiting. The lawyers are anticipating fireworks in the courtroom today. Of course, in a positive sense, if you ask me. Lawyers are heading into the courtrooms. The security operatives are at their duty posts doing what they need to do. The DSS officials, the police, anti-riot policemen, and plainclothes security operatives are on ground doing their job as they need to. And of course, the journalists, our constituents, they are also at their position preparing for what is to be Nigeria's, one of Nigeria's biggest days, like playing a World Cup final, if you ask me. So Nigerians are keenly waiting to see how the events will pan out today.
All right, talk about it looking like a World Cup final. There are reports that some people have decided to gather in certain places to watch the live proceedings. Aside that, do you think the NLC strike, has it had any impact on people moving about, on movement in Abuja, as it impacts on the delivery of judgment today?
Well, the NLC strike hasn't impacted. Of course, we had thought they were supposed to picket the venue of the Election Petition Court judgment, that's the appeal court. But of course, that hasn't happened yet, I must stress yet. Because when we were at the Federal High Court yesterday, we were in there doing a few things, preparation to today's event. And then before we left, they had, placed a strike notice on the board, on the gate, at the gate of the court, indicating that that is out of bounds. As for whether the effect of the NSA strike is being felt in the Federal Capital Territory, I will say a big no to a large extent. But of course, I can't say if this is about the NSA strike or not, but one thing I can very clearly tell you is that there were barricades of military checkpoints on our way from the busiest part of Abuja, if you ask me, from Abuja, access of Nasarawa and Abuja, that's Maraba, Nyanya area. There were there were 2 or 3 checkpoints on the road leading to this the central area, central business district of Abuja. So the traffic build up there is quite massive. You can call it Carmageddon if you like. It's quite massive. You see traffic building up kilometers with people having to leave their vehicles to walk distances to get to their workplaces in the central business district of Abuja. So as for the effects of the NLC strike, it's not as effective as you would have wanted in terms of whether it will affect these proceedings here. It's not as effective as it should be for now as it is, but as for the effect, it's hard to tell if it's very effective, but well, we're still watching to see how it will pan out. But one other thing, someone told me yesterday that nurses in solidarity had to leave their duty posts to, because of the ongoing NLC strike. That's about the most effective point I can point out with respect to the ongoing NLC strike. Other than that, the effect is not as impactful as one would have expected right here in the FCT.
Okay. So a couple of things. What time are we going to start proceedings today? Exact time. We're hearing 9, we're hearing 10. What are you hearing from Phyllis? The various parties involved, have you been able to talk to any of them? Their expectations leading up to this. Another question will be as regards crowd control and people. I hear they want to reduce the crowd around there. So that's why they say they will be beaming it live and all of that. So are people gathering? Are supporters gathering around there? Let's hear through all of this. But what time precisely does it start? That we can say, okay, we'll beam live and they see it and they push.
Tentatively, we're looking at 10 a.m. for time to kick off. 10 a.m. tentatively, but we can't say for sure. 10 a.m. most likely the court will start proceedings. As for whether people are gathering around the premises, protesting or whatever, I can hear from where I'm standing chants and singing, from supporters of the Niger Delta group led by Asari Dokubo, a strong supporter of the Nigerian president, the former presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, who of course is in the eye of the storm with respect to these petitions that will be heard or whose decision will be delivered today. So that's about the gathering so far within the court, around the court premises, because of course any gathering close to the court premises is of course can't work because of the strong security presence right here to ensure there's no breakdown of law and order.
Well, very quickly, let me ask you, is it possible for you to talk to anybody around the court premises so that we get a real feel of what is going on in locus? If we could just talk to anybody around you there.
Well, getting to... Yes, of course. There's nobody close by except for some security operatives to my left, and then, of course, far away to the gate, other security operatives are there too. Nobody close by right now. Of course, everybody's trying to get their seats because there's going to be limited seats. I'm standing here now, I'm actually concerned about getting my place in the courtroom because the court already have people outside waiting to find their way in to get seated. So I, for one, getting someone to speak now will be quite an uphill task.
But is it possible? Is it possible for the cameraman? Is it possible for the cameraman to just pan around, just to show us the environment for us to see, beyond just talking to you alone? Yes.
Yes, he will.
Okay.
He will. All right. So pan around. So just show. So he's going to show you the security operatives just behind me. You see, that's the vehicle which the DSS are using to screen people who are entering the courtroom. Those are the vehicles, metal scanners and all that. That is the vehicle of the State Broadcasting Service, National Broadcasting Service. The DSS operatives, you can see them packed. You can see their vehicle packed right there. And then to the left, you will see the gates where the security operatives are clearing people who are coming in. You can pan a bit to the EOD and all that. Just you can see vehicles and all that outside, gaining entrance. So it's quite strict. So you have to have a pass to access the court premises. So that's how strict it is. From where we are, you can get just a sneak peek into the pictures of the security operatives, finding their way, screening vehicles that are coming in, and they're coming in their numbers, and there are still many others awaiting screening as we await. It's going to be a very, very big day at the Court of Appeal, where the Presidential Election Petition Court will be holding its sitting.
Thank you very much, Godfrey, for giving us that panoramic view of what the environment looks like. We'll remain in touch with you. This being the main story of the day for both Nigerians and also Nigerians in diaspora and the international community, as President Tinubu is away in India pumping hands, attending events on the sidelines of the G20 summit on the occasion of the 100th day of his assumption of office. And, the Nigerian Presidential Tribunal giving a verdict today. We'll remain in touch and we'll continue to cover it. Thank you very much, Godfrey.
Well, moving on to our other story for today, as Dr. Basi has mentioned, we'll certainly be keeping up to date with what's going on at the Court of Appeal in Abuja. The two-day warning strike by the national leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress witnessed significant compliance in Bayelsa State, although most banks in Yenagoa were open for transactions. Expressing support for the industrial action, some residents urged organized labor to do more to draw the federal government's attention to the excruciating hardship on citizens due to fuel subsidy removal. Arise News correspondent Theophilus Agidi reports.
The two-day warning strike called by the Nigerian Labour Congress is coming on the heels of an aborted meeting between its leadership and the Minister of Labour, Simon Lalong. In Yenagoa, Bayelsa State, the strike compliance is almost total, with public schools, courts, and government secretariats closed.
The compliance is okay. When you go, there is no work. Everything stands still. And that is what we want in society. As a civil servant, as a worker, as an ordinary person, we need the good thing of this life. And I think they are working towards the betterment of everybody.
The way the labor is handling it, for me, I like it. And the federal government is not complying based on what labor is demanding from the federal government. They are not complying. So for me, labor should still go further. Put more effort to ensure that everything should be done amicably in this country.
The federal parastatals which I work, we are on strike today. There is a memo that went around. I even received it. We are writing exams now, but exam has been postponed.
Contrary to the fears expressed by many residents, banks in Bayelsa State were opened to the public, even as streets recorded the usual volume of people going about their daily business.
It is like they are neither here nor there. You want to act, you don't want to act. So if we want to go on strike, if we are not satisfied with the money that is being assigned for palliative, then let us take action. Let us say this is our position. Nigerians will support them.
This is for the second time this year, and you are giving 2 days. The first one is indefinite. Now you are giving just 2 days. I believe the 2 days is not necessary. Just give it indefinite, because you've tried an indefinite and you cut it short. They have to come up all out. They have to let the people know that they are for us, not just coming up with 2-day strike. Maybe a lot of money in your pocket, you will now roll back.
Meanwhile, NLC President Joe Ajaero has threatened that workers in the country will embark on an indefinite shutdown if steps are not taken to address the sufferings of citizens. Theophilus Agidi, Arise News.
Well, today is the NLC strike day 2, and as we asked, even from Abuja, it seems like it's not gathering momentum, or the impact isn't felt, or people aren't complying as we thought they would. Rufai?
No, so predominantly, I think it's a mixed bag. In some areas here, there was total compliance. Even in Abuja yesterday, there were reports of total compliance, government parastatals short. Pretty much it was empty yesterday. Even the streets, parts of the streets were very empty yesterday in Abuja. In Lagos, yes, compliance was not, in unison everywhere. And I think the high-handedness, even of some of the NLC officials, is something we should totally berate and repudiate this morning. The fact that they were flogging some people to comply, that's totally bad. And I think the NLC should call their people to order. So why are we having this strike? Or why have we always had strikes? Because government acts in bad faith, pure and simple. As regards this, government has gone ahead to renege on all the things it said initially it will do. At first, it said it was going to meet with the NLC over 8 weeks. They were going to have a tripartite committee to be able to talk about palliative and workers' welfare and all of that. Nothing was done. Occasioned by the subsidy gone announcement that was not well planned. And hitherto, there are reports now that we are back to those regimes, because now crude oil price has hit $90 per barrel yesterday. And if you are to extrapolate the cost, we should be paying more at the pump price if you are to use market forces than what we are paying now. And President Tinubu has said stall the price. Obviously, a regime for subsidy is back, and we can't deceive ourselves. But the hardship on the people, also occasioned by other circumstances in the economy, and the labor is pushing back and saying, government, you need to do a whole lot more for the people. Another part of the bad faith is the fact that the labor minister showed bad faith by constantly berating the labor authorities while he was calling for a peace meeting at one end. The TUC is saying, okay, they want to give them 2 weeks before they, make their own decision. But the NLC has gone on 2 days. Collectively, it's been a mixed bag. There's been compliance in some areas largely non-compliance. I mean, you can see the footage out of Bayelsa. There's the government official saying that in his office things were not working. A Shemogai reported that nurses joined in solidarity. But today in Abuja, obviously, you see a lot of people because of, the election petition tribunal. So I think what the government should do, and these are part of the things that's going to blight this administration. First 100 days as we look back, a lot of false starts based on thought-out decisions, poorly implemented decisions, poor logistics, poor scenario planning, poor outlook. It's been poor. And only to cap it up, also what former Governor Fayemi said yesterday, that this APC government did use this subsidy removal as politics when President Jonathan tried removing it in 2012. How they politicized it and blackmailed President Jonathan. And he went further to say that the last time we had development was under President Goodluck Jonathan. So it is obvious now that their arguments were not right in 2012. And they just did it because they wanted to gain political power. How funny that our politicians use the future of Nigerians to play politics. And that's why we say don't die in their war. And it's been a litany of failures in the last 8 years of the APC, now leading up to this first 100 days, which has been a lot of hardship. But the government has the capacity to be able to create solutions. They've set up their presidential initiative on gas. We'll see how the implementation goes. They've earmarked 250 billion because we need alternative sources of energy. So how the government works as regards to the presidential initiative of gas and makes CNG gas available and the conversion process available and the adoption process available for all of people, that's what will really herald their next 100 days. Also, as regards this sharing of palliative, how it's going to go for the people. Also, how the government is going to tackle the forex crisis and the insecurity crisis happening, and how the government is going to respond to prices of petrol that's constantly going up, or maybe we'll have a reprieve when prices of petrol go down. So those are going to be the things we'll look at as we go on and on.
All right.
Okay, what's the subject again? NLC strike,
NLC
right?
strike, day
okay.
2.
It's important. We'll focus on the subject, and it is as follows. The NLC announced yesterday that they were going on strike after failure to get the federal government to come to the negotiating table and to address its own promises. So the strike started yesterday. But what was significant about this strike is that the TUC, the Trade Union Congress, met with the Minister of Labour, Simon Lalong, and said that, they were going to give the federal government, as requested, 2 more weeks to deal with some of the issues that have been raised. Now, what we saw yesterday was the effect of the divide and rule tactics that the federal government had adopted, which then meant that there was partial compliance with the order, with the directive by Nigerian Labour Congress that organized labor should go on strike. So it wasn't as effective in Lagos, in Sokoto State, in Katsina, and it was only partially successful in the Federal Capital Territory. So that is to be expected. Day one, if TUC and NLC could not come together, then of course you will not expect total compliance. Many of the banks that have been directed by NUBIFIE, which is the umbrella body for the financial institutions and also for the banks, some banks worked, some worked half day, some were not sure whether they were going to open their doors to customers and only did so partially in many parts of the country. The only union that was probably most effective was the Maritime Workers Union, which effectively shut down the ports in Lagos yesterday. And then we were also told that civil servants did not show up at many of the ministries in the Federal Capital Territory. Where they showed up, some of the staff said, well, they showed up because the minister was around. And they felt that they should not leave the ministry if the minister was around, but that immediately the minister left the ministry, day 2 will just immediately abscond. Today is day 2. The question is, how effective will it be on a day that is very special to Nigeria, 100 days of President Tinubu assuming office, the day that verdict will be given in the presidential election petitions at the Court of Appeal in Abuja, in line with Section 285, subsection 6 of the 1999 Constitution, which says election petition tribunals should deliver their judgment within 180 days. We have 25 other states that are also before the tribunal, where the position of gubernatorial candidates have been challenged. Now, they all have up to September 16 for the tribunals to deliver the rulings. But in any case, all of these issues coming together on the same day. But how effective, some of the basic questions that you can raise will be, how effective will the protest by labor be? Now that labor is divided, now that government has shown that, it's asking for more time, how much more time does government need to address the grievances of the people? Today, it's a very funny combination of a number of factors. You have the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, the 5-man panel led by Justice Haruna Samani, delivering its ruling. You have 100 days of, the assumption of office by the new administration, and you have Nigerians who are groaning in despair, in frustration, and they are unhappy about the policies of the Tinubu administration, the post-Buhari administration, which has shown that, yes, it's in a hurry to make a difference, but the people are suffering. And this is the context for the protest by organized labor. But how organized is labor itself? That is the big question. In 2012, there was a protest against the Jonathan administration over the same subject. Everybody was organized at the time. Maybe perhaps because there was a political dimension to it, because there were political gladiators pulling the strings in the background. This time around, it looks like labor is on its own. And it's so easy for labor to be manipulated by those who are in charge of power. It's a wake-up moment, a teachable moment. for organized labor, the leadership of labor. Festus Osifo on one side, Joe Ajero on the other side. But the Nigerian people would, as we move forward, as they do this, they are testing strikes, as I have described it elsewhere, will determine whether organized labor is really acting in the interest of the people or organized labor is just doing testing. Because those other motivations that were there in 2012 will appear to be absent because the same people who provided the catalyst, the oxygen for the 2012 protests are the ones that are in power today. And hence, it's just testing. Labor, all of a sudden, not being so sure of itself. I think it's an unfortunate moment for organized labor.
Yes, it is. I think following the meeting on the eve of the first day of the warning strike on Monday evening, where the Nigerian Labour Congress didn't appear for the meeting with the government, with the federal government, whilst the TUC appeared and stated in the communique that they had given the government a 2-week grace to meet some of the requirements that they had given. From that moment, it was clear that since the House was divided, the election or the success of the strike perhaps would not stand. As the House divided itself against itself, it will not stand. And we saw this play out in major cities across Nigeria yesterday, the first day of the warning strike. And what we had said already when we came here yesterday was that it seemed like business as usual, especially in the commercial capital of Nigeria, Lagos, where vehicles were moving, up and down. Some schools resumed on Monday and they continued on Tuesday. Banks were open, transactions went on as normal. In fact, in a report, it was said that the Lagos State Civil Service had said that from their perspective, the reason why they didn't go on strike as ordered by organized labor, NLC, was that they felt that some of the agitations for which the strike was premised on had already been met by the Lagos State government. So, for instance, in terms of wage increase, they said that the Lagos State government had adjusted that a while back. In terms of palliatives, they said they'd already received their palliatives. So, in their own, perhaps defense, there was no reason for them to go on a strike. And when you look around the country, you would see efforts made by state governments, even though the federal government has not sufficiently provided palliatives as asked or as being advocated for by Nigeria Labour Congress. At the end of the day, as has already been explained and established, the strike is to protest, amongst many things, the federal government's handling of the removal of fuel subsidy and the attendant effect on Nigerians. And the fact that despite meetings or attempted meetings, nothing concrete in terms of its effect on Nigerians has been done. Nevertheless, the question is, do Nigerians want to go on strike again? Can Nigerians afford a strike? Recall that this strike was announced on Friday and was meant to start on Tuesday. The time, in terms of time given to let people know, to inform stakeholders that they will be going on strike. Of course, when it comes to downing tools, it is to send a powerful message when you almost cripple the economy by downing tools. But obviously, a number of people, a number of groups didn't quite align with that. And for a strike of this nature to achieve its purpose, then all hands must be on deck. If it's a partial strike, it is no strike. It's as good as no strike. With the FCT, yes, being the center of, the capital of the Federal Republic, yes, has a big impact in terms of the strike taking effect. But even in that city, it wasn't the entire city that was, that aligned with the strike. So perhaps it's also a call for organized labor to go back to the drawing board to re-strategize that when it comes to strikes and negotiation, after a while, people get weary if it doesn't seem like it's fruitful or things are coming out of it. The purpose of this is to get the federal government to listen. But in order for the federal government to listen, the people have to want to be part of the actions and have to be carried along in the process. And they need to see that labor is organized indeed and are speaking on behalf of the people. They say this is a warning strike. In 21 days, there's going to be a total shutdown. Hopefully, the federal government does its own end of the bargain in 2 weeks by acceding to many of the requests, at least those that are not that are time-bound and do not need a long-term plan for wage remuneration review, palliatives, successful implementation. There are already reports of the DSS being able to stop some diversion of palliatives in Nasarawa State. So already that is already happening. So these are some of the things that the federal government must respond to. Today is 100 days. It doesn't augur well for any government in the first 100 days to be hosting or dealing with a strike by the organized labor or by the downing of tools across the country, especially when we are in a dire economic situation and we need productivity at its optimal.